Weekday afternoons from 1 on Talk Radio.
Just something on the wider issue of corona. We've largely kind of avoided coronavirus in one respect, I suppose, today. In terms of developments on the story, we're always right on it. But there's been a few other things to examine, as I think you'll appreciate. But this comes in from Les. Says we often discuss if things will change for the better after all of this. One thing I really believe will alter is the working from home ethic. I think thousands of companies will relook at this and either close down physical buildings where it can be done from home, or put staff on a rota basis, so working from home 1 week and then maybe from work the next. This will be a massive positive for well-being and work-life balance. I'm sure I read today that New Zealand are now seriously talking about a 4-day week. I think Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister, may well have already made noises about the 4-day week. I feel the wheels are about to come off this woman's administration at some point soon. It's just been this merry-go-round of joy. And she gets married to a good-looking guy. She has a kid while in office. She's breastfeeding while at the dispatch box. Not quite sure she did that, but spoke about it, I think. And I mentioned that only because of the sort of, if you like, the real modern nature of the image she's carved out as the PM of New Zealand. Now she's advocating a 4-day week. We'll watch with interest. Is it possible? 0344 499 1000. Now, it is not obvious there will be an immediate bounce back for the economy once the lockdown restrictions are eased, says the Chancellor. Rishi Sunak said he hoped for a swift recovery, but it could take time for the UK economy to be back to normal. Giving evidence at the Lord's Economic Affairs Committee on Tuesday, he said it takes time for people to get back to the habits they had, noting that even if firms reopened, households might still be reluctant to start spending again. Jonathan Davis is an economist and also a podcaster as well. He joins us now. Jonathan, afternoon to you.
Hello, Ian.
I'm looking for light at the end of a rather grim tunnel. Am I on a journey or a hiding to nothing here?
You're speaking to the wrong person for a light at the end of the tunnel, then.
Go on.
Sunak is managing expectations. He wants people to not expect too much. In other words, that we go straight back to where we were back in January, February. Gosh, it was all of 3 months ago. Has it only been 3 months? We clearly have gone down the downside of a roller coaster going into lockdown. The economy has gone down easily 15% compared to where we were last year. But when these idiot politicians, when they eventually reopen the economy that they shut down for spurious reasons, no doubt another discussion, of course there will be an immediate bounce in the economy because all these hundreds of thousands or millions of people will be going back to work, for example. But what we won't see is the economy going back up to the level of where we were in January or the end of last year. Yeah. And indeed, net for 2020, we're going to have seen the biggest reduction in the size of the economy compared to the prior year since at least World War II. Then the next question is, and this is maybe what he was also addressing, was how long before we get back to where we were? Well, I'd say at least a few years, because the growth, if there's any at all, after the immediate surge, as I say, will be very slow in the economy for quite a long time to come. The level of unemployment will be very substantial, corporate bankruptcies and so on.
Yeah, I mean, this is the problem, isn't it, Jonathan? Because there may well be companies open, but they're reopened, but there'll be many, one has to assume, that don't reopen, that they never open those doors again after this.
Look, Ian, furlough is the most expensive unemployment benefit on the planet. But for furlough, companies would be going bankrupt today, and already the approximate, as I estimate, 1.5 to 3 million unemployed people would be going unemployed immediately. The politicians are just pretending that everything's okay. When we reopen and the economy is clearly in recession, the amount of stuff to be bought and sold and services bought and sold will be materially lower than last year. Well, of course, there will be big closures, big redundancies, 1.5 to 3 million unemployed. I mean, think, for example, the leisure sector. Think restaurants. These companies are not going to get the business back. You don't go to a restaurant and suddenly order 3 meals, do you, to try and catch up on what you missed? Yeah. And of course, on top of that, they won't be getting the same trade that they did previously, because unfortunately, people have been scared to death, literally and metaphorically, by what we've been told every single day for the last 2.5 months. People will simply not be venturing out as much as they did previously. They've destroyed the economy. It's unbearable.
I mean, it is unbearable. Of course, as you rightly said, Jonathan, another discussion about the merits of closing things down. I mean, I take it you're sensing that this was over the top.
Wildly, there are countries around the world, Sweden, South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore, who didn't have lockdown. They haven't had an economic collapse, and they also haven't had different numbers of cases or deaths to us. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a no-brainer.
In terms of the time frame, and you mentioned, it could be a couple of years. I mean, are we ever going to see, do you think, even when those restaurants new restaurants start to come on board, folk have forgotten that there was once a horrible virus around, more money is available, we begin to go back out to some semblance of normality. Do you think it's more longer term, Jonathan? Have things changed for good?
Economic growth, as I say, post the surge, when they reopen the economy, economic growth in the medium to long term, in other words, the next several years, will be very low. We're going to, for example, have sustained long-term higher unemployment. We're going to see a lot of white-collar people who were earning very well. They're not going to have those jobs. Thus, aggregate total income for the economy for people is going to be materially lower than it has been. And then add on, and I don't think anyone's talking about this, but, we are in the markets worlds. Post-lockdown, we're actually going to see higher and higher general inflation, cost of living, cost of doing business. And that also is going to be a headwind on the economy. Clearly, So put it all together: higher sustained unemployment, lower aggregate income, higher costs of living and doing business. We're going to see very slow growth. The technical term is stagflation, economic stagnation and inflation, the worst of all worlds, for several years.
House prices on the floor, cost of flying sky high, to coin a phrase, that kind of world?
House prices are going to be affected. And I think it's a very interesting point you bring up. I'm very glad you did, because it's an issue that I want people to know about. House prices have already, of course, although it's not in the data, but, just ask anyone really who's trying to sell a house. House prices are down, say, 10, 20% or so, and that will become clear when we get the actual sale prices several months down the line, because it's going to take that long. But, as I say, higher unemployment, lower income, and what do you get with higher inflation? You get higher interest rates. House prices are going to be, at best, from a fall just now, at best flat, probably down. I think we're in a 4 or 5 or 6 year house price crash. which could knock, let's face it could knock 25 to 40% off house prices. The reason why we didn't get it in 2008, well, one, it wasn't as big a recession as we have now, and two, in 2009, they slashed interest rates. So one, they're not doing that, and two, actually, we're likely to see higher interest rates down the line next year or two or three.
Good work, Jonathan. Passionate stuff, emphatic stuff. Jonathan Davis, economist and podcaster as well. That was a very brutal but candid picture of where we're likely to go, and I don't think you even had to read between the lines to know what he thought about the lockdown as well. It's going to be fascinating. Will they ever be able to ascertain? They'll be able to compare country to country. But if we had no lockdown right now, beyond kind of areas around care homes and things like that, so we didn't have any lockdown, would the death rate right now have another 100,000 in front of it, or another couple of hundred on the back of it? I don't know whether they'll ever be able to fully work out retrospectively, had we done this. You can make comparisons to other countries, but then it's not just based on lockdown. There's other factors in there as well. 0344 499 1000. You're listening to Ian Collins on Talk Radio. It's coming up on 3:20.
Talk Radio.
Max is